Hey guys, John Paulamy here, Actionable Intelligence. Today is Saturday, May 3rd, and this is the weekly market update. A disclaimer, anything that you hear or see on this podcast or video is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a financial advisor. I cannot give you personal financial advice. All information here that is presented uh, is not financial advice. So please do your own due diligence. It's your money, it's your responsibility. Okay, before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going on vacation next week. There will more than likely not be a video next Saturday, May 10th. I will resume the following week. I'm going to be out of town. I just won't have the ability to make a video. I will be, of course, you know, monitoring things, but I will be out of town and there will be no video. Okay, so from Ray Dalio, he posts his essays or his writings on LinkedIn. This is a blurb I put as the title of the slide, Unsustainable. And what I'm talking about here is the debt situation, the balance of payment situation for the U.S., the trade situation, simply unsustainable in its current form. And whether we like it or not, whether we think it'll work or not, this particular administration that was voted in is pursuing actions that they believe will rectify these unsustainable um, characteristics of our economy. Um, the future is completely unknowable. So there's a lot of people that have opinions. Um, I think it'll be very difficult in the political atmosphere that we find ourselves in the West and the United States in particular, to reverse 30 or 40 or 50 years of decline in a four-year administration, which is really only 18 months because you have the congressional elections coming up. But nevertheless, this is what's happening. So we need to, kind of look at it and at least not ignore it. Now, a lot of people are saying it's going to be the end of the world. We're going to have a recession. We're going to have this. Like I said, this stuff is unknowable. Just say this is going to happen. And with certainty, you can't know the future. There is risk. I'm not saying there isn't risk. There's a lot of risk out there. There's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of, with the trading being dominated now by computers and bots, they just scan the news items. They're very unemotional and they sell or buy based on these things. So you're going to get a lot of volatility. However, I think the volatility for people that know market history, I mean, that know that we go through these periodic times of it's the end of the world as we know it, times in the market, which has been, somebody did a very good tweet about this, which I didn't post here. I'll probably put it in the weekly free email. But they were talking about their experience of a friend that was two guys that were professors at a school, and one guy decided to go off and start his own private equity fund or investment fund, and he did it during the tech bubble. And the other guy didn't want to go; he wanted to play it safe, so he's still teaching. And the other guy started his fund during the tech bubble, which was another end of the world event. If you were there, you understand the sentiment in the market, the volatility, what had happened. And this is not unique. This happens every couple few years. There's some new thing that's going to change the world. This is overhyped, and then there's always some, you know, disaster that's going to end the world. As I've said before, things are never as good as we think they are, and things are never as bad. And so ended up where this guy that started the fund in the middle of the tech bubble ended up running a fund now of about $1 billion, and he's making about 10 million a year. The other guy played it safe. He has a comfortable life. But the point of the matter is that when we think things are bad, there's still opportunity. Okay, there's opportunity in the world. There's places around the world that are cheap, okay, that have positive things going on that are catalysts for higher stock prices. We know that the United States wants to pursue a weak dollar policy in this desire to revitalize U.S. manufacturing. Whether you think that will be successful or not, that's what they want to do. If they're successful in weakening the dollar, what does that mean in reality? Well, that probably means foreign assets, commodities do well, and emerging markets do well. And so we have to look at things for the way they are, not the way they want them to be. And we also have to understand and have humility that we cannot know with certainty the future. We can look at things, we can try to use discernment, we can try to exercise our biases and just look at things factual and try to forecast, which is something we need to do. As Druckenmiller says, look out a year, 18 months, not right now. But again, periods of volatility and end of the world scenarios never really seem to materialize in these markets. And if it creates volatility, if it creates um, emotional responses where the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater, historically, this has shown us that these are tremendous opportunities for people that understand market history and understand that sentiment and liquidity is what drives markets in the short and medium term. So getting back to the slide, this is an excerpt from Valio's recent writing on LinkedIn. I'll have a link in the show notes. Though not yet fully realized, it is also increasingly being realized that the United States' role as the world's biggest consumer of manufactured goods and greatest producer of debt assets to finance its overconsumption is unsustainable. So assuming that one can sell and lend to the U.S. and get paid back with hard, i.e., not devalued dollars on their U.S. debt holdings is naive thinking. So other plans have to be made. Okay, let's analyze that. So what's basically in a nutshell been happening is we print dollars, we create currency units known as US dollars because we have the reserve currency and we buy things with them from other people around the world. They take these dollars. We keep creating these dollars. I've used the analogy of baseball card collecting. In the 80s, it became very popular in the mid to late 80s. Card collecting was very popular. And so what happens when the ducks quack, feed them? There was a lot of demand for cards, so the card manufacturers printed billions and billions of cards. And so the cards from that era don't have a lot of value, okay? Because there's a lot of them. And so the value of each one is, not the same as like a, 52 Mickey Mantle or some other card from another era where the supply is not that high. It's a supply and demand. And so we've been issuing these dollars, and we have the reserve currency because of certain things that we have here. Perception of rule of law, very strong military, stability economically, politically, and socially, which I think is deteriorating, but that's another conversation. And that's why we have this reserve currency. Okay. A lot of it was luck. We weren't affected by the two world wars. We had these two moats around us. We weren't affected here in the battles. Our infrastructure wasn't destroyed, so we had a leg up. That gave us a leg up on others. Okay, that weren't so lucky in Asia and Europe. Nevertheless, that's what we've been doing. We've been over-consuming and underproducing, and we've been shipping these dollars. Now, uh, getting back to quoting what Valio says here, so assuming that one can sell and lend to the U.S. and get paid back with hard, i.e., devalued dollars on their U.S. debt holdings is naive thinking. So other plans have to be made. So the jig is up. Our people around the world have figured out what's going on. That's why you see gold as a reserve asset by central banks increasing over time. That's why you see the hesitancy, the reticence of people to continue to get these dollars. You're giving me dollars. I'm buying your treasury debt. You have an unsustainable debt situation going on. Are you actually going to pay these dollars? Are you going to pay this debt off? And if you do pay it off, what's the value of the dollars that you pay it off with? This is what we've been talking about for years here on this channel. Okay. And so as this becomes more and more at the forefront of people's minds around the world, they're going to be looking to not get as many treasury securities in dollars. And this is why gold has been performing. This is why in the face of real positive interest rates, gold continues to go up because central banks are accumulating it because it's something that they can accumulate. You know, people say, well, the dollar, is going to remain the reserve currency. The dollar will remain relevant. The UK exists, the pound's still there, but it's not a reserve currency. The dollar is going to have to compete with other currencies as these other trading blocks, these other countries grow, their share of GDP around the world increases, their trade flows with each other increase. The dollar doesn't necessarily is going to be one of many currencies, and gold is a currency. This is what is attractive about gold is it can't be created by fiat. Energy has to be expended. People have to go into the earth and dig it out. It's energy intensive and time consuming. This is why Bitcoin is gaining traction as a store of value because whether you agree with it or not, it's something similar. It can't be created ad infinitum. And so this is why this is unsustainable for the US dollar. So going on to the other snippet I have here from Dalio's um, writing. Said more simply, enormous trade and capital imbalances are creating unsustainable conditions and major risks of being cut off. So they must come down, i.e., excessive imbalances plus deglobalization equals smaller trade and capital imbalances. So that's what this administration is trying to do. Will they be successful? Are they doing it in a prudent manner? I don't know the answer to those questions. Do they have the time to actually do it? More than likely not. Are we going to have to endure monetary and economic disruption? More than likely. I'm going to show in some subsequent slides. We have like a tsunami of recession is coming towards our shores. And it's a choice that's being made in the estimation that down the line we'll have a better, more sustainable economy and monetary system. But I don't think personally that they can pull it off, but we will see. We'll get into it. Again, link to the article in the show notes so you can read fully what Valio is saying. So this is from U.S. Global Investors. This is the container bookings from China to the U.S. are falling sharply year over year, percent change in 20-foot equivalent units, containers. You see in March 2025, at the end of March, we're down 6% year over year. April 7th, down 21, April 14th, down 44, April 21st, down 48%. So this should tell you something, right? Um, Now, you hear different people from the administration, different people on social media, on the news. Everybody has an opinion on this. The, the facts are that the things that are made in China are going to start being scarce on the shelves. I don't know to what extent. I don't know how much was bought in preparation for this. I don't know. I don't know if there's some deal being made behind the scenes, and in a month or two, they're going to have some grand bargain. I do know this is going to affect China. The bargain in China that the CCP has with the people is, people seem to think that you have to, regardless of a government, whether it's communist, democracy, monarchy, whatever, you still have to have the acquiescence of the people. History has shown that they have to go along with it. You just can't. Yes, you can use a certain amount of tyranny and things like that, but people, will lay down or subvert, things or outright revolt. And the deal in China is the government can run the government, do what it wants, but you have to make us wealthy. You have to give us jobs. You have to. And so if there's the largest consumer market is being slowly but surely cut off, then that's going to reverberate back in the supply chain, back to the factories. You see shipments down this much, what's happening in the factories back in China? Are people being laid off? Are they happy about it? Are they going to start? People don't understand. There are a lot of protests in China, thousands a year, actually. Okay, so the government there is sensitive to this. This is the grand part of the grand bargain they have with the people. And if everybody's being laid off, because this is Chinese exports to the U.S. represent about, I think, 10 to 13% of their economy. That's still significant. Okay, and so both parties, you know, this is kind of this game theory thing, which I don't really want to get into because I'm not schooled up enough on it. We're going to have to wait and see. But, is this the end of the world? No. Do I think, it's not just the US that's going to possibly have a recession or higher costs with stagflation, uh, but the Chinese are going to be affected. So the idea that the administration is that they have better hand and that the Chinese will knuckle under. You know, the problem that I see with the Trump administration is they're not very good diplomatically. They don't understand that you can't just use blunt force with people, especially Asians, Japanese, Chinese people. I'm not an expert, but I did live in Japan for 3 years, and I see that how the society is. You can't act in a meeting with. I've been in meetings with large Japanese companies when I was in the renewable business. You can't act with them if they're not performing, or they will say things like this. It's about face. Let me break it down. It's about face. You can't embarrass them. You can't cause them to lose face. There's ways to get your way with them, and they don't want to cause you a loss of face. I'll give you an example. So if you're in a discussion with a Japanese, for example, and they're not doing something that you feel they should be doing contractually or they're not performing, you will ask them. I mean, an American company, you just get into that butt. You can start going at, you know, company and say, hey, you guys are not doing this. It says to do this. These are the LDs. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to take a giant, what on your head. And, people will usually devote the resources and get because they just, this is just how things are done sometimes, okay? In these discussions. With the Japanese, they will say stuff like, well, hey, I need you guys to do this. You're not really performing, or it appears to say this in the agreement, you're not doing that. And then they will just look at it, pause and look at you. Then they'll say, well, they won't say, well, we're not going to do it or we can't do it. They'll say this would be very difficult to do. And you need to be able to understand these nuances. And I don't see that in this administration. New York real estate developer, a bunch of guys that were in finance, in New York. This isn't how they really, I don't see that person or persons that is schooled up on uh, how you deal with Asian countries. And there's variances between them, how you deal with Chinese and how you deal with Japanese or South Koreans or what have you. But the main thing, and one of the main things in Asia is making sure that you don't embarrass the other party or cause them a loss of face. How can you get where you need to go and get them where you need to go in a negotiation so they don't look bad coming out of it? Okay. They don't have a loss of face. And I think that's going to be difficult for this administration. This brute force, swing a hammer mentality can work in the US. And that's how we do things here. You know, you get with the program or else. But that's not really going to work, I think, with these folks. And so what I'm concerned about is you may be in a situation where people want to get to a solution with you, the other party, but they can't because this is a stumbling block. So I think they have to be careful of that. But this is interesting. Um, and this kind of flows into the next chart. This is from the Apollo group. They put this out. Trade reset recession. This is Apollo Group Management put this out. Trade reset forecast to trigger a recession by summer 2025. Well, we're coming up on that, right? See, April 2, Liberation Day, tariffs, container departures from China to the U.S. slowing rapidly. Takes 20 to 40 days for a container ship to transit. So by early May, mid-May, container ships to U.S. ports come to a stop. Well, we're already seeing the slowdown here. We showed it. 1 to 10 days after that, truck rail transit time to cities, okay, from the port. Mid-May, late May, trucking demand comes to a halt. I wouldn't say it's going to come to a halt. There's still activity in the U.S. Uh, then you start seeing empty shelves and companies respond to lower sales. This is what we have to watch for. Do the shelves start to empty? Do costs go up? Does panic ensue? Does sentiment start shifting? do companies then start looking and saying, okay, if you're a trucking company, if you're in the retail sector, hey, our sales are going to slow down because we just don't have product. Resetting expectations down in earnings estimates. What does that do to the market? You see how this stuff can reverberate, okay? And so they go on to say that by late May, early June, layoffs in trucking and retail industry, summer 2025 recession. And so this is what I said would, we thought would happen. We would have a recession early on in this administration. Hopefully their view is, I think, that they're going to try to get a deal, get these deals done. We don't know what they're trying to do because it's so chaotic and the messaging is chaotic. But if they can get everybody on board and get some reasonable things going and get trade flows again, it would take another 2 months to ramp everything back up with our trade partners with whatever the tariffs are going to be at. And then that hopefully sets the stage. Can you negotiate all that in 2 or 3 months? Probably not. I haven't seen any major, this administration has a lot of big talk, but like the Doge thing, where are the 2 trillion in cuts? We talked about that last week. Then it went down, during the election, during the campaign, it was 2 trillion, Musk said. Then it was 1 trillion after they got elected. Now we're down to like 150 billion. I saw a roundtable the other day with Musk and Jesse Waters from Fox with the different guys that they have doing stuff, and they talked about some highlights, but where's the hard data on all these cuts? They're finding all this waste, fraud, and abuse. Where are the arrests for the fraud? What are they doing that's going to be able to be implemented such that we don't have it again? I mean, it's just total free for all, evidently, but we have these very opaque and shifting numbers, unfortunately, downward. Same thing on this. I mean, you're talking about countries' trade situations that have been in place for decades, and you're going to negotiate this in 30, 60, or 90 days? Probably not. And so, how long is this going to drag out? And as the economy starts to weaken, there's going to be calls for the Federal Reserve to cut rates to stimulate the economy, which they're going to be reticent to do because if you have shortages of products, you're going to have inflation. If you have a set amount of money and less products, or if you have more money and less products, you get inflation. So you're going to have layoffs going on, possibly, a recessionary environment. That's your stag part. And then you're going to have inflation that's self-imposed. It's not, we've said in the past that inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon, but this is a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be done. I'm just telling you this is what these folks are saying. You're going to be in a stagflationary environment like the late 70s. What does well during that? Well, hard assets, gold. So this is something we need to really pay attention to because this is the data and it's pretty amazing. Okay. That's just from China. Okay. So do I think that other places will step up? Yes, but it takes time. They're moving, manufacturing to Vietnam and India, and some of it will come back here ostensibly, not socks and underwear manufacturing or assembling little electronic gadgets, but some of it will come back. But this will all take time to sort itself out. Does the administration have that time? Can they get us to that morning in America and show that the short-term pain is worth the long-term gain? Because I can tell you that historically, as I've said many times before, the party out of power usually picks up seats in the congressional, you know, by-election, and that's coming up. And if the Democrats get in power, it's not going to be people that are saying, yeah, we get it. Let's work together on things we agree with. These are radical left-wing people, and you're going to have all these hearings and nonsense and impeachment and all this other stuff, which won't go anywhere, but it'll be a colossal waste of time. And the media is going to jump all over this and fuel it. So, you know, that's what I think will happen. So, will they pull a rabbit out of a hat? Again, unknowable. But, this is going to create more volatility in my mind. If this actually takes place, the stock market is extremely overvalued still if this is what the future looks like, because earnings estimates will start coming down, sentiment in the market will become negative, and you also have sell-offs. Now that will create tremendous opportunity, but we'll see what happens. So shifting over to uranium, here's a tweet from Uranium Insiders talking about this was discussed on the Cameco conference call recently, I think last week. But he says here, so where I put it here, where is the Kazakh acid plant? This acid shortage that was prohibiting the Kazatomprom from increasing production to meet their subsurface use agreements production levels. Evidently, we haven't even put a shovel in the ground. So here's what the tweet says. So CAP's 800,000 tons per year sulfuric acid plant that was supposed to start construction last year has yet to see a shovel hit the ground. It's expected to be operational in 2027, and in our estimation is essential for them to reach 100% proposed subsurface use agreement production levels. Well, they're not going to meet them. They're not going to meet them. And so this is further going to constrain the supply of uranium. And you say, well, John, you've been saying that you're out of breath. Yes. Yes, we have a supply demand deficit. It's going to get worse in uranium. I will say that uranium seems to have rallied recently. Maybe it was coincidence or because of this, but I think spot's over $70, or it's $70 a pound now again. Uranium stocks have rallied a bit. And so I'm still bullish. That doesn't mean one of the things I want to say, I guess I should take a sideline here. A lot of people, even some of my subscribers have been writing me and saying, you know, position sizing. Look, when you're dealing in resource investing or speculation, more speculation, in my opinion, you have to go in with the mentality of certain facts. Number one, mining and resource investing, let's stick to mining, is a very bad business over the years. It's a net destroyer of capital. Why? Because it's a cyclical industry. Okay, these companies are all price takers. They don't make anything. They have no proprietary. Copper cathodes are copper cathodes. Okay, you buy the cheapest ones you can, as long as you can certify whatever the you know level of purity or constituents or whatever of the metal that you need. Okay, so there's no added value from mining. The price goes up, you try to increase production. So problem is that we have very big extremes in cyclicality in mining. The price goes up, capital flows in, every marginal production gets turned back on, and start bringing on greenfield, and eventually that sows the seeds for the next downturn because you overwhelm the demand with excess supply. And then you go through a down cycle where the marginal producers and the people that are high cost go out of business or shut down. And that sows the seeds for the next upturn because eventually enough supply will come offline and the demand will either increase or stays at the same level, and you get below that, and then the price rises again. Rinse and repeat, the big oscillating curves. Now, each commodity or metal or whatever has its own supply demand dynamics of things that affect it. And so most of the time, the mining companies, they're not good businesses. They're net destroyers of capital. Now, on the up cycle, they have typically, not every time, because as prices go up, a lot of times costs go up. So there will be times where there'll be short windows of opportunity, maybe a year and a half, where the companies, because the demand and price has went up drastically in a short period of time, people that are still around producing will have excess profits. And those are the times when you can typically uh, buy and make money in these resource stocks, okay? Because the speculative fever gets going, the juices get flowing, sentiment is very positive, nothing but sunshine and rainbows forever, and a lot of capital flows in. But again, you've already sowed the seeds for the next downturn. So this is what a lot of people don't understand. So if you understand that part of it, which is a fact, then you have to move on to the next fact. You don't put all of your money into these companies. You have to understand the volatility. You have to position size. How do you mitigate risk in a portfolio? Through position sizing. I have people writing me telling me I have 70% of my assets in uranium stocks. That's too much. Don't do that. You have no certainty to know what's going to happen in the future. And what uranium stocks are you putting your money in? With the exception of Cameco, which is probably overvalued currently, and Kazatomprom, which is having issues, what's investable in the sector? If you've bought, 70% in any asset class is too much. If you're buying junior stock, you have 70% of your money in junior gold stocks or junior uranium stocks, you're swinging for the fences. You're not investing, you're speculating. What should you do? Well, what should I do, John? Well, depends on your risk tolerance. What you're trying to do in that situation I just described is you might as well go to Vegas and put everything on red or black. That's basically what you're doing. You're gambling. You're not investing. You're not even speculating. You're gambling. So you look at the sector and you say, okay, where am I at in the cycle? What's my thesis? Okay. And then you invest accordingly based on how much risk that you think you can take. You have to know yourself. You have to look in the mirror. It's hard when you're first starting out investing and speculating. You're on the internet, you're hearing all these stories. Man, this sounds really great. I want to get involved. Let me open up a Robinhood account and dump $1,500 in and put it in a junior uranium stock. Wrong answer. Have you written down somewhere why uranium you think is going to go up? And then what's the best, how much risk you think? You look in the mirror and say, how much risk if am I comfortable losing my whole stake? If some of these companies are going to go away. And so if you put, if you're that bullish on uranium, maybe in a total portfolio, you put 10%. That's even high. 5%. Okay. 5% in uranium in a $100,000 portfolio is $5,000. Okay. And then maybe you put it in five different juniors or something that you've researched. And three of them will probably not do well or go out of business. One will probably might, if you're lucky, kind of do a little bit okay, and one might be a superstar that bails out the whole portfolio. That's how you do this. So that if you lose the entire 5%, you still have 95% of your capital. Now, if you really know what you're doing and you're, Paul Tudor Jones or, you're Stanley Druckenmiller, well, you can go, or you're George Soros or big swing and you know what, that actually has decades of experience, then yeah, you could do whatever you want because you have the experience, you have the mental models, you have the stomach for it. If you're some guy that's just getting into this, you don't put 70% of your money into gold stocks because everybody on the internet seems to think that gold's going higher. When you get to that, that's chasing shiny objects. I've explained this many times. you know, what's wrong with just watching the Sprott Trust that buys physical uranium when it gets to extremes of uh, selling well below? I mean, I think a month ago, it was selling almost 20% discount to net asset value. You can buy physical uranium for 20% off. Why wouldn't you do that if you think uranium's going to go higher? But no, everybody has the visions of sugar plums. I want to put my $1,500 in that one stock that's going to be the mega uranium of this thing and go up 5,000% with no understanding of the market, no understanding of the resource and cyclicality, no understanding of the companies that you're putting the money into or the people that run them. It's bizarre. You can't do that, guys, and be successful. And then you'll curse it when it goes up, but you played it completely wrong. You didn't do it right. Now, I can't tell you, but people on even my own subscribers, what should I do? I can't tell you that because I don't know you. And even if I did know you, I can't tell you. To thine own self be true. You, if you're going to invest, you have to understand that there's a lot of emotions and psychology involved. This is what makes most people unsuccessful. You have to know yourself, and it takes years to do that. You don't just say, "Yeah, John, I agree with you. You should buy low and sell high." That's easy to understand. Everybody understands that statement. Almost impossible to do for most people. Literally, guys. Everybody goes and watches professional sports and dreams that they could have been, or, I could do that. No, you can't. No, you can't. So if you want to be an active investor, you can become your club champion in golf, very close to it, and be competitive, but you're not going to be on the PGA. But if you practice and do, you can improve. You can improve your results. But when you're an active investor, it's very difficult to beat the market. You have to have extreme patience. You have to understand and be able to tolerate volatility. You have to step in and buy when everybody else is selling. And, you can read all the books about all the great investors. I've read them all. I'll tell you which ones to read, and they'll tell you same thing. And they will tell you that they have difficulty doing it. Druckenmiller talks about how he got body slammed during the tech bubble. He played it perfectly, made a ton of money, okay, when it was going up, and then sold. So this is overvalued. His intellect, his experience showed him this is an overvalued market, cruising for a bruising. I'm out. And he had made a ton of money. And then he couldn't help himself because it kept going up. And so he got back in. You can read the story, look it up, Google it. I'm just paraphrasing it here. And then he got body slammed. So even the great ones make mistakes. So, you know, just because a bunch of people on the internet say something's happening, you have to do the work. You have to get, you know, you have to, how do you get conviction on an investment theme? You've studied it, you understand the dynamics of it, and then you position size accordingly based on your knowing yourself and what risk you're willing to take. If you're willing to put 70% of your money in there, if you have $100,000, you've got 70,000, and that thing gets cut in half. Okay, your portfolio just went from 100,000 to 65,000 because you had 70% in these uranium stocks, 30% in cash or other things. You could have lost 35, 40% of your wealth. Now you have to get almost a double to get back. So no, I don't advocate that you do that. Okay. Opportunities come along, even for example, when oil is trading at negative 47%. I bought a lot of junior oil stocks, but I didn't go all in on them because you didn't really know what was going to happen. Some of the companies that I bought, we had to see a rebound fairly quickly or they were going to be out of business because they had a lot of debt. Now, fortunately, they made it through because things reversed rapidly, but you don't have 100% certainty. And so some big swing, so you'll read the article about the guy that did it. He went all in. This is what the media loves. They love these stories. The guy that went all in his mom's basement in socks and his underwear, okay, and he turned 10 grand into 100 million. Then everybody thinks that that's what they're going to do. Well, that's not how this is done. We are trying to be active investors because we think that we can bring enough patience, we can bring enough research, we can bring enough uh, ability to discernment of undervaluation so that we can outpace just putting our money in a low cost S&P fund and compounding at 9% a year on average. That's what we're trying to do here. And so if you're trying to get rich quick, there is no such thing as getting rich quick. This is the problem. So enough of my lecture. I kind of went off, but people always ask me, well, how should I position size? When should I sell? I can't tell you this. I don't know you. Even if I did know you, I don't know you enough. I don't know how your head works. If you lay awake staring at the ceiling, I don't know, if who you are. So going back to, we just talked about the supply. Now we're talking about the demand. China announces another 10 reactors. Okay. This whole thing about China, bashing. I mean, China has problems, okay? They have imbalances in their economy. That goes without saying. But on some fronts, when they say that they want to increase high-speed rail, they do it. They come to your village and say, this village is moving over there, and you move. It's not, you don't protest, you don't tie it up in court, you move. Am I saying that's right or wrong? No, I'm not saying that. That's what they do. That's why they've completely built out a high-speed rail network over the last 5 to 10 years, and you still don't have a high-speed rail network in California. Well, you'll never have it. Okay. The same thing with nuclear power. We could be building 101. Jennifer Grantham said that at the Vodal plant, and I agreed with her. That should be our policy. That should be our Eisenhower interstate roadway moment. We went to the moon. We built the interstate highways. We're going to build 1,000 megawatt reactors in the next 10 years in this country. And we're going to be on TV with the Commerce Secretary, the Treasury Secretary, the President, all doing this. We're going to have all the industry people there. We're going to create this mission to the moon, if you will, because building 1,000 megawatt reactors in 10 years would completely transform this country economically. In the meantime, China just keeps building reactors and we don't build any. What are we doing? Now they've not only done this, they're creating the infrastructure behind it because most of these reactors, as this blurb says here, says China is accelerating its nuclear power expansion with the approval of 10 new reactors in 5 coastal provinces, totaling $27.4 billion in investment. Most of them will feature China's domestically developed Oolong 1 technology, each capable of powering about 1 million people annually. So when they build these reactors homegrown, what do? They have the support structure behind it, the infrastructure, the manufacturing, the engineering, and they can begin exporting this technology. And the U.S. just sits here because our political system is not set up to move rapidly. We're getting left in the dust. This is why I say we're in terminal decline. This is not the only reason. This is one of many. Okay. We have a frozen political system where people are treating this like a football game of who could score the most points on the other team instead of saying, here are the benefits, Mr. Democrat, nuclear power. Okay. It gets us off fossil fuels. It's economically, it will create jobs, union jobs. It will create STEM. Okay. Everybody should be for this. Instead, we want to fight, fight, fight. And who benefits from this? China's not China, India, Russia. They're not waiting around. They're going to continue to advance. Rosatom already exports its technology around the world and builds reactors for people and has a whole supply chain and can provide the engineering talent and teach your operators how to operate it. And after a certain amount of time, they you can have your people running it. And then you're buying fuel from them and buying engineering support from them and part support. You see how this works? You see how this could affect the United States and be big deal, and no one's doing anything about it. We're just talking, talk, talk, talk. So here's Tracy Schuchart from. They had a recent meeting at the Harold Hamm Institute for American Energy, and so Amazon and NVIDIA say all options are on the table to power AI, including fossil fuels. Amazon and NVIDIA told a room of oil and gas executives this week that all options are on the table to power artificial intelligence, including fossil fuels such as natural gas. The tech and energy industries gathered in Oklahoma City at the Hamm Institute for American Energy to discuss how the U.S. can meet the growing needs for AI data centers. There you are, folks. That's what these reactors should be being built for. Instead, they're not going to wait. People need the power. If you go listen to the GE Verona conference call, which was last week, and they will tell you about all the backlog they have for gas turbines. Okay. So people aren't going to stand around and wait. Okay. They're going to try to move forward. This is why I said that Amazon and these companies should get together in a consortium. They should be brought in as part of this discussion about this interstate highway moment, but around nuclear power. We need your capital. Okay. We need your expertise of moving things, entrepreneurial, you know, get things moving. Look at how fast Musk got his data center up and running in Memphis. We need to cut the regulation, not so it's unregulated, but such that it makes sense instead of just doing everything we can to slow everything down. Bring these people in, bring in the utilities, bring in, you know, the energy companies, have the government sitting there. Okay. What's the energy secretary doing? Is this going to happen? So in the meantime, they're saying, well, we can't wait. We got to get these gas turbines up and running. I think it was Enterprise Pipeline Partners, one of the big pipeline companies. Energy, I can't remember which one. Um, in their recent conference call, they showed a slide. I'll try to dig it up. Entergy, one of them. I can't remember. Anyways, um, they had requests for data center running gas line trunk lines off the main pipelines to 70 or 80, something like that, power plants that were going to be built by these data centers. And so, again, there's a tremendous need for electrical generation. And so these companies were, massively sensitive to fossil fuel use and CO2, but this is their business. Okay. And so again, reality, physics, and economics trump, wokeness. So it's an opportunity. Yeah. I mean, I'm not advocating you go out and buy GE Verona. It's probably overpriced, but their business is doing very, very well. The only business that's not doing well in there is their wind business. But that's another story. They're, you know, it's a tremendous business because you sell a heavy gas turbine. Okay. You install it, and then there's usually packages that you can buy for ongoing parts support, engineering support, software upgrades. These are all high margin businesses for GE, not just selling the actual metal, you know, the turbine. That's has value, but all the ancillary things that go along with it. And it's the same thing that would happen if we would have this nuclear renaissance and build out on a scale like we did during the Eisenhower administration. I don't even think you could fully calculate the economic impact that building out the interstate highway system had. It had so many spillover effects. So, anyways, that's what I see. Yeah, this is interesting. They're not going to wait around. So some things are happening. The U.S. adds 10 more mining projects to fast-track permitting list. The Trump administration on Friday added 10 more U.S. mining projects to a fast-track permitting list aimed at expanding critical minerals production across the country. Projects which would supply copper, palladium, and other minerals have been granted Fast 41 status, a federal initiative launched in 2015 to streamline approvals of critical infrastructure. The latest 10 projects The latest 10 include a proposed copper and nickel mine in Minnesota from a joint venture of Glencore and Teck Resources, a New Mexico uranium project from Energy Fuels, expansion of a Montana palladium project from Sabine-Stillwater, an Alaskan silver project from Hecla, and a Georgia titanium dioxide project from Chemours. So this is what we need. This is what I talked about in a recent newsletter. I talked about how tremendous amount of mineral wealth is right here in the United States. We just need to have it unleashed. And so that the administration was talking about doing that. But if you can just, are you really going to get Glencore and these other companies to step up and spend the money they need to build out these mines when in 4 years you can have a complete change in the political climate, swinging right back to the left and environmentalism, and all the lawsuits come? You have to have certainty in policy and what's good overall for the US. If you're going to have a deglobalization, if you're going to be competing with China, okay, and you're just cutting one of your own arms and legs off if you're not going to responsibly develop the resources here in the US. I don't know how to make it any more clear. You can't have an economy without raw materials. It's that simple, especially on the critical minerals list when we don't hardly produce any of this stuff. We have it here, we're just not producing it. Does that make sense to anyone? So this is something else to watch. So I want to talk about this. This was on Twitter or X. Gold, I put there will be corrections. This shows the gold bull market from 2001 to 2012, where you went from basically 275, 250 for the low. High was, I think it shows it on here around 1921. So you had a $1,600 move over basically 11 years. So it was a 650% increase. They put a blurb in here, silver gains even more and corrects even more. So what I wanted to show you is during this time, during this 11-year bull market where the gold price went up 650%, that there were corrections, okay? And they last for some period of time. Like in 2003, you had an 18% correction. It lasted 280 days. Okay. 2004, you had another correction, 13%. It lasted 301 days. Then you have a subsequent move up. Then you had a 25% decline in 2006, 490 days, and on and on and on, ultimately ending up with so some of these corrections were over a year. This is why, unless you're a really good trader, I'm not a good trader. And so I don't trade these things, okay? Um, this is why you have to have a thesis and understand what's going on. Why did gold go up over the period of time? 11 years. What was going on? What's going on now? Okay, and understand that in the short and medium term, a cyclical, you can have a cyclical bear market in the context of a secular bull market. You have to understand this. Now, if you can trade around this, God bless you. You should start, doing that, and you'll attract a lot. If you can do it successfully, you're going to attract a lot of money. I guarantee you people will throw money at you, but most people can't do that. But you need to understand this. We showed the same thing with uranium. People still don't get it. So when you're in this period of the doldrums, after we have a 25% drop and nothing happens for a year, it takes a year to get above the old highs. People will lose interest. They'll sell it off. Nobody will be talking about gold, and then it will start moving higher again. And then we'll have the bleacher bums and shoe clerks will arrive and say, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You're idiots. You know, when you don't even understand the context of why this moved like it did or why it's moving now. Are the things that are moving gold now deglobalization, uh, people wanting to disgorge their U.S. dollars, not having confidence in the U.S. government or the country of the United States to pay its bills, the fact that they're devaluing the dollar over time and they're going to get paid back with, the fact that they're running around threatening everybody with trade sanctions and do this or else um, rhetoric, freezing people's assets. This is why gold's moving higher now. Remonetization of gold in the context of over-indebtedness around the world, $300 trillion in worldwide debt, pension schemes, social security schemes, and healthcare schemes for old people that cannot be paid. Yes, if you're in China or Russia or India, Brazil or these places, you're looking at it and saying, I have problems here, but how many dollars do I really want to hold? If I have a trade surplus with the United States and I'm getting more dollars and I recycle them into U.S. treasuries, is the U.S. going to implement yield curve control and basically steal my money? People spent time and energy was giving the products to the U.S. that they gave us these pieces of paper for. So this is why gold's moving higher. Do you see the debts in the U.S.? Do you see the deficits declining? Do you see the U.S. debt at least plateauing, or do you see ever increasing debt? If you then that's what's propelling gold higher. But there will be times of excess speculation where gold gets above where it should be, and it will retrace. This was what happened during the last bull market. So you need to be understanding that this is what's going to will happen. There will be pullbacks. And so if you are uninitiated and you don't have a lot of experience investing or speculating, and you're wanting to push that trigger, are you buying at the top of a intermediate cycle? Or have you bought when nobody wanted gold, when we're talking about a year ago, or a year and a half, or 2 years ago, when you should have been buying then? What are you doing? So this is from the Gold We Trust pre issuance package that came out. It just shows the historic. These are the guys in Gold We Trust. They put out the annual gold and Gold We Trust chart pack. It's like 200 charts. Anyways, coming out in May, I think. But they put out a preview. This is one of the charts I wanted to show. Historic price does not equal historic value. Gold silver ratio points to more upside. Talking about silver. So you see that this is the gold to silver ratio. Okay. And you see that when it's up around 100, which it is now, slightly above 100, I think, this represents the fact that silver historically relative to gold is undervalued. And what normally happens during these precious metal bull markets is gold will initially advance, silver will lag, but at the end of as you get near the end of the precious metals bull market, silver will go on a scorching run and usually outperform gold at the end. You have an opportunity right now. So somebody asked me, well, what would you rather buy? Gold. I'd rather buy silver at this level. That doesn't mean silver junior stocks, but silver bullion. If I was buying bullion, I would probably concentrate on silver bullion now. Now you have to understand you know, if you start buying silver bullion, it's going to pile up quickly, depending on how you buy. If you're just buying one coin a week or a month, that's not a big deal. But how many monster boxes of silver do you want in your back bedroom? Becomes logistical problems at some point. And so what we see is in 2011, the average, the gold and silver is 60, but you see at peaks like in 1980 and 2011, it'll be substantially below the average. That will tell you that you're near the end of a precious metal bull market. But and that's when silver usually outperformed at the end of it. So right now you see going back 50 to 55 years that when you get to 100 to above 100 or 100 to 1 in the gold and silver ratio, it's typically a good time to be buying silver. Historical narratives do not guarantee future performance. So now I'm going to get more into the political situation. So if you're not interested in that, this would be the time to disengage. Short pause. Okay, this is a Reuters article that was if you're paying attention to what's going on, they had massive countrywide blackout on the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal. Portugal imports power from Spain. And so the Spanish have been very aggressive in moving to renewables. They've shut down a lot of coal plants. I think they were talking about getting rid of some nuke plants. Anyways, they had a big blackout and it was a lot of chaos there. I think they had just bragged like a month before or several weeks ago that one point that the entire country was running on renewables at some point. And of course, they made a big deal out of that. And then, of course, those who the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. Then we had this, and there'll be more of this. Why? Because you cannot the instability. So there was a Reuters article because the mainstream media is going to underplay it, but in the article, the guy who wrote the article kind of own goals himself, right? He doesn't really understand how grids work. So they blame the grid, of course. Okay. So it says, don't blame renewables for Spain's power outage. That's the title of the Reuters article. Link in the show notes. While it may be tempting to blame the unprecedented power outage that hit the Iberian Peninsula this week on the rapid growth of wind and solar power in Spain, reliance on renewables is not to blame. Rather, the issue appears to be the management of renewables in the modern grid. The massive blackout on Monday, the biggest in Europe's history, should be a stark warning to governments. Investments in power storage and grid upgrades must go hand in hand with the expansion of renewables generation. This is the own goal here. The cause of the initial drop that led to the catastrophic events is unclear, though a collapse in Spain's solar power system was certainly involved. So if you read the article and you know anything about how a grid works, you know that solar and wind are intermittent. They had a big collapse in production. And they don't have any spinning reserve. They actually, he calls it something else in the article, but they don't have spinning reserve. The reason why renewables seem to work in the US and some other places is because you have a tremendous amount of base load spinning reserve, gas turbine, coal, and nuclear plants that are running in the background. And so we've been able to, at this point, been able to ramp when the wind stops blowing or clouds come, we're able to ramp up these other gas turbines or coal plants or nuke plants and take up the slack. They don't have that in Spain. Okay, so they blame the grid. So you need more storage, more waste of money. How much storage do you need? Well, you need if you're running wind and solar, let's just say at 30% capacity factor, you need 3 times the demand in storage. The numbers become like huge. Why not? So what is the point of all this? In a country like Spain that its emissions are like peeing in the ocean. I'm going to fill the ocean up by peeing in it. It has no effect on global emissions one way or another. But this is what they've chosen to do. And so, of course, the grid gets blamed. We need more storage. We need to waste more money on, things that don't work, which we've shown. I like to point this out because there's going to be more of this, not less of this. Now, Canada has elected a prime minister who is a WEF shill, for example, and is talking about implementing net zero in Canada. Canada, that's above the United States, that's closer to the Arctic Circle. You're going to run the joint on renewables. Good luck with that. And so it's tempting to think this stuff can work or we can, it doesn't work because of the intermittency. Unless storage comes down and becomes like very, very cheap, which it can't because of the mineral requirements. We've talked about that before too, how much rock has to be moved, the amount of mineral inputs, and you're not even allowed to mine anywhere anymore. Where are you supposed to get this stuff? So we've talked about this before. So I would read the article um, because I think this is going to continue to happen. And as the European countries or other countries move to these fantasy lands of 100% renewables, there's going to be more of this. It's just that simple. It happened in Germany during the winter, not a full blackout, but uh, when the wind stopped blowing. I mean, why would you build solar plants on, you know, near the Baltic coast at these higher latitudes? The sun, in the winter comes up at what, 8:30 or 9 and goes down and starts going down at 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon. You're going to run a modern industrial economy. Well, we'll just deindustrialize. See, that's how we're going to do that. And we'll all live in 15-minute cities and rent our pots and pans from each other and ride around in robot vehicles. I mean, this is why you're seeing political backlash that you're seeing. Now, the people in Canada evidently decided this, they want to keep going down this road. I think a lot of them, just to get off track here, voted for, you know, this conservative party there. It's just two sides of the same coin. And there's no third party, there's no insurgency going on that people can go to. Did people in Canada really vote for Carney because Donald Trump said they were going to he wanted to make it the 51st state? Was the election in Canada really about Donald Trump? I mean, if that's the case, then it's a lost cause up there. But again, we'll see. My predictions will continue to come true. People don't want to be poor and cold and sick and hungry. And if you're going to reduce the amount of energy in an economy, that's what they'll be. That's why they'll react negatively. Okay. And so that's what we're seeing in places like Germany. People have had enough. And so the traditional Christian Democrats and the socialists and the Greens, you know, are not meeting people's needs. People are not feeling good about their situation. So they're flocking to an insurgent party, the Alternative for Germany, AfD. And so the establishment there, the globalists, the pointy shoes, the people that hate their own people, tie themselves to globalism, and the people in Brussels, that's what they care about, being in power, getting unearned. These are all shills and bums that have never done anything anywhere. Okay. And they want free money and power that they don't deserve. And they hate their own people. And so when an alternative springs up, especially in the east of Germany, and says, you know what? This is stupid. Why are we deindustrializing? Why don't we reconcile with Russia and get the cheap gas and minerals in here so that we can go back and be prosperous? No, because your leadership is tied. So an alternative party comes along, and so guess what? As it gets more and more popular, because we've just rearranged the knuckleheads in the traditional establishment parties with this another wet noodle, Frederick Merz. You had Olaf Scholz before that, and the horrible Angela Merkel before that. So people are saying enough. We want an alternative. And so the alternative now has been dubbed right wing, has to be shut down, just like they do all over Europe. That's why I said here, I use the old uh, terminology from the Vietnam War. We have to destroy the village to save the village. We have to destroy democracy to save democracy. So here's a tweet. It says, Germany has officially labeled the AfD party as extremist. The Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution said, quote, the AfD poses a threat to democracy and is classified as an extremist organization, unquote. They're extremists. The media will tell you that they're Nazis, that they hate. If you look at the policy platform of AfD, it's Bill Clinton, 1996. It's not extremist, okay? It's not extremist. It's just anti-establishment. It's center, maybe center with a little bit on the left, a little bit on the right. When it first formed, were there extremist elements in it? Yes. Have they purged it? Maybe not fully. There's always going to be people that are, you know, have extremist views on both sides of the aisles. But this is somebody at a party, so they can't let these people continue because they're eventually going to continue to gain momentum and gain followers because people have had enough. They don't want to be cold, hungry, and poor. So that Ursula von der Leyen and the rest of the knuckleheads in Brussels can, you know, like I said, there's people treat it like it's Western Europe is Ursula von der Leyen's personal Barbie playhouse. They don't care or even like the people in these countries as long as they go along and allow them to stay in power and get free money that they don't deserve. The worst of the worst are in power. So this is happening all over Europe. Marine Le Pen brought up on charges, can't run for office. Judges banning people in Romania from running for office. That's democracy. Who determines what's extremist? Well, the establishment does, because they don't want to be challenged. Their ideas are bankrupt. Their policies suck. They're not meeting the needs of their people. The people are aggravated. Well, we take away all. So I will tell you to do a homework assignment. What happens? President Kennedy talked about this once in a speech. If you take away people's ability to voice their discontent through the democratic process, they will resort to violence. I'm not saying I hope it happens. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just telling you what happens historically. You should research how it was in Western Europe during the 70s when they had the Red Brigades and the terror that was going on. People forget all this stuff. I'm not suggesting that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying if you take away everybody's outlet and they feel they have no stake, there are going to be reactionary elements that pursue other means for change. That's just how it is. It goes on here. It says German intelligence will now have additional powers to collect information. It will be able to monitor the AfD, including wiretapping and accessing the correspondence of party members. In addition, civil servants will be banned from joining the party. The decision comes as the AfD took first place in national polls for the first time in history last week, overtaking the ruling party. There's a good movie, I can't remember the name of it, um, that kind of showed how things were in East Germany. This guy was part of the Stasi, which was the secret police. I think that one time the Stasi had like 1 in 6 or 1 in 8 of the people of East Germany were stooges informing on their neighbors and workmates and stuff like that. And this guy was like an artist or a writer in East Germany, this other guy. And this guy was assigned, they put wire listening devices, and he was like in the apartment above him, I think. And he would just sit there and listen and tape record this guy's life, his intimate moments, his supposed. It's a very good movie, but it shows you, I can't remember the name of it now, but it shows you the extent. People of East Germany remember that. Okay. There's still people that were alive that remember that. You remember that the Berlin Wall came down in 1991. So there are many people that grew up under that or know that and don't want to see a return to that. So there's going to be a reaction to this. Okay. And there's going to be dissidents and there's going to be people that get arrested and they're going to have to. It's kind of like Princess Leia told Darth Vader, beginning of the first Star Wars movie, as they captured her on her ship. But the greater you tighten your grip, the more star systems are going to slip through your grip. Same thing here. The greater, there's not going to be an outlet. So some people will say they're for this because you know, they believe what they've been told uh, about these. Because if the AfD gets in power, what does that mean? You have Georgia Maloney. She is in power. She's not. She's getting more and more anti-EU. He's already said, "I'm not going to send Italian troops to Ukraine. I'm not, doing certain things." Tightening down on is immigration into this country. It's destabilizing the country. Talked about Islamization of Europe. Marine Le Pen talks about that. Hey, we're not going to have any of that talk. We're going to bring these people in and displace. So we don't have any nationalism anymore. We don't, when we say France, it's just a thing on a map with all kinds of people that happen to speak French. But what does it mean to be French? What does it mean to be German? We don't, the original intent of all this was we were going to have this EU bloc that was going to trade so that we wouldn't have another, European war that devastates kills tens of millions of people. Look what it's turned into. These people get into power, the worst of the worst, the biggest dummies I've ever seen that don't have no idea what they're doing, have never done anything well in their life, and yet they're in power. And then when people had enough and started exerting through the democratic process, because the EU's not democratic, Ursula von der Leyen's not elected, the Commission's not elected. Who are these people? So we'll see how this goes, but it's not going to bode well. Um, there's going to continue to be, if they continue to pursue the policies they're pursuing, they will continue to become poorer, and the angst and the aggravation of the populace is going to continue to grow, and it's eventually going to result in violence. So that's what's going to happen. So I wanted to show this. This is I got this off Twitter. It's the Daily Shot. Millionaires are fleeing Britain. How many times in the history of this channel have I shown you, time after time, that if government attacks wealth, the wealth will leave? Okay? It doesn't work. People aren't going to work and be slaves for the state. If they can get out, they get out. So it said last year saw the biggest outflow in at least a decade. This is the number, UK high net worth individuals net migration. Yeah, the handwriting's on the wall. Your government typically treats you as a milk cow, where they just milk you. But in some cases, what's starting to happen is they treat you as a beef cow. They just kill you off and take everything. Now that's, I know, hyperbole, but this is what happens. Wealth and capital, capital not just being money, intellect, ability, youth. This is human capital also. The best of the best leave. Why would they stay? There's no opportunity. You're going to take everything from me. I can't get ahead here. This place sucks. This is what happens. And so the people want change. You just saw what's happened in recent elections in the UK. Reform is now the most popular party. Now, I don't think that that's going to be the agent of change because I think Nigel Farage is controlled opposition. There's no, radical, but at least it's an indication that people have given up on, in some cases, they are threatening the establishment. Now, you had this overwhelming landslide for Keir Starmer, and he's already one of the most unpopular PMs in the history of the UK because the policies are not benefiting people. It's all globalism all the time. And so the race is on for Keir Starmer and the globalists to get reverse Brexit and get the UK back in the EU. That's what he's focused on. That's why he's there. Watch it and keep the war going in Ukraine because it has nothing to do with the democracy. These Western European leaders, it has nothing to do with democracy. They don't care about the Ukrainian people. They don't care about Ukraine. Okay, it's past that point. This is a rallying call to hold the EU together and try to keep the US and NATO. That's all this is about at this point. So this is the one thing we can rally around because Russia is going to take over Ukraine. And if they take over Ukraine, they're going to roll into Europe. And so we have to increase defense spending. We have to have more regulation. We have to stick together. More EU. We need more EU. It hasn't worked up to this point, but we need more of it. And people are going to get out. They're going to this sucks. I'm out of here. And in the background, the thing that I keep talking about that no one else, very few people want to talk about, those Muslim babies keep getting born, and you have more and more migration of Muslims, and they're going to start exerting political power. And it's a situation that everybody wants to close their eyes to and pretend isn't happening. So in the background, you have a simmering situation with the continued Islamization of Europe. There was a recent 18-year-old girl, Muslim girl, full hijab on, got elected to a council in one of the cities in the UK. I saw her on Twitter. She wants full Sharia. She wants separation of men and women in public. I mean, what is this, Saudi Arabia now in the UK? Now you laugh and say, well, that won't happen, John. Yeah, it will when they get to a sufficient level of population. Why don't you take your butt into one of those predominantly Muslim areas and start having those conversations? You'll be beaten. You'll be chased out. That's not going to happen. Yep, you're not going to be the last gazelle. At some point, every one of you listening is going to have to take a stand. You're going to have to pick a side. It's coming sooner than you think. In a lot of facets, politically, economically, socially, you're going to have to pick a side. Are you for the true, the good, and the beautiful, or are you for evil? That's really what this comes down to. I'm going to start talking about this more. It's a spiritual matter, guys. There's evil in the world. Okay, it's on the march. Can't you see it? And so that has a component. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Again, no video next week. Be back the following week and take some time off, go on some vacation. But we're in the summer now. Enjoy your summers coming up, family trips, fishing, baseball games, all the fun, cool stuff. The end of the world isn't here. It's never as good as we think, and it's never as bad as we think. So perspective is important. Volatility in politics, economic, this all creates opportunity. That's why we're here on this channel and why we speculate and invest. All right, that's it for this week. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Thank you.